Hey, you guys. I'm just getting everything set up. Hello, hello. Hello, how are you? Sorry, I'm just still getting everything set up. So I decided to take a break from unpacking. Last time I went live, I was taking a break from packing. Oh, thank you. We've actually so we moved on Monday, so 2 days ago. And we've actually gotten like a lot done, but you know how unpacking it is, or how unpacking is. It kind of feels like, it's like cartoons when the kid is like pulling hamburgers out of the stack of hamburgers, but the hamburger pile never goes lower. That's kind of what it feels like when you're unpacking a house sometimes. It's like, I know I just unpacked 4 boxes in my room, but you cannot tell at all. Where's everyone from? I have no agenda for this live, so I figured it'd just be kind of like an open Q&A. You can ask any questions that you guys have about like narcissistic recovery, or if you just have questions for like me and my journey, or anything related to that sort. I can make a poll if I need to. Oh, from New York. Yes, it is daunting a little bit. What I mean by narcissistic recovery, when you're on the receiving end of narcissistic abuse, so like when you're recovering from that trauma. From Denver, Colorado, but moved to Tennessee. I love Tennessee. From Tejas. If I moved anywhere outside of where I'm at, it would probably be Tennessee. I love that state. Oh, thank you. Do you feel like you're improving more now that you are sharing in videos? That's a good question. I've been doing this for a long time now. It's been a little over 2 years since I've done stuff in this niche. And I would say at the beginning, it definitely did. I think it just kind of helped. It helped break the isolation a lot because when I started sharing videos on TikTok, that's where I started. Was on TikTok. I didn't realize how many people had also gone through this. And so I think that alone helped. And sometimes when you're able to just like talk about your story, that in itself is healing. So now it's turned more into like a passion of mine, and I mean realistically it's like turned into a business and stuff. Like this is what I do for work outside of school. But the passion that I have behind it is to be the resource for other people during their healing journey that I did not have. That's the whole goal of it. But when I first started, it absolutely did. That's a good question. I hate it here. I get homesick. Well, Colorado's a beautiful state too. I visited there several times. So I feel like, yeah, I feel like no matter where you go, you'd be homesick for Colorado. How's everybody doing over in the Facebook world too? How did you start the process of leaving the narcissist? Oh, this is a fun story. So there was a particular day. I'll just kind of tell you all about how the relationship ended. To be honest, it's kind of a whole story in itself. There was a day where it was a really bad day, and he and I were in a pretty big argument that actually included my kid's mom. So it was like this triangulated argument that was going on. It was very twisted and a whole deal. But he like crossed so many lines that day, not just with me, but also with her, because she and I have a very, very solid co-parenting relationship. So I'm really protective of that unit, if anything, just for the well-being of my kids. And it had gotten so bad that I felt like we were at the point of no return. So my plan was, because you have to remember, like, I still didn't really consider the fact that I was in an abusive relationship. It didn't click till after. Um, so I had kind of come to terms in my mind that I was going to end things, but I was going to do it like amicably. We lived together, but the house was only in my name. So I was going to essentially kind of do like I was going to offer to do like an in-house separation, give him like a month to find a new place, like all this. Like I had a plan to where it wasn't going to necessarily be dramatic. Think it had to happen the way that it ended up happening, because I think if that had gone down, I would have stayed. But what ended up happening was he came home that night from the bar, because instead of coming home to like deal with the problem, we went drinking and other thingings with our friends. And that was when things got like dangerous. It got really, really bad. And so I actually kicked him out that night. And so I didn't even have the opportunity to like enforce the plan that I had. And like I said, that happened 100%. That was like God orchestrated, because I think if I had tried to do my original plan, I would have ended up staying. I think I needed to be forced in that position to where it was almost like fight or flight, like get out. Because I knew if I hadn't kicked him out, I knew if I didn't stand up in that moment, I would have gotten very physically hurt. So my plan I didn't even get a chance to do my plan. Going no contact now. Well, I know that's mixed emotions, because I know there's a lot of feelings when you're going no contact, but that's also very exciting, because I'm very pro no contact. I don't tell my clients necessarily in coaching that they have to do it, because I don't feel like that's my job. But it was definitely the right move for me. Because it's hard to, in my opinion, it's just heal and move forward when you're in contact with the person that caused you trauma. Absolutely. Whoa. Oh, there we go. I absolutely love your content. Oh, thank you. I got out of an abusive relationship 2 years ago. Well, I'm proud of you for getting out and staying out. Any tips on how to stop ruminating? Oh, thank you for asking that question, because that actually reminded me of something. So if you are struggling with like rumination, or dealing with all the different arrays of emotions and all this stuff that happens, or if you are really struggling with like anxiety, or even dealing with triggers. So these are like the top 4 things that we struggle with after we leave a narcissist. And so because of that, I'm actually doing, excuse me, I'm actually doing a group coaching, and it starts on June 27th, and it's 4 sessions total. And we're tackling each one of those areas. So it's going to be emotional management strategies, how to deal with your anxiety and paranoia, reducing the intensity of your triggers, and then processing the grief. That's the 4th one. So that's starting on June 27th. The registration's still open, because I do still have a few spots left. So if you are interested in that, it's a total of 4 sessions. Even if you can't make the sessions live, they're all through Google Meet. If you can't make it live, it's no big deal, because anybody that's registered for it gets a recording of all the coaching content. But we do like on-call exercises where we can apply the stuff that we're doing and that I'm teaching. So that way, I feel like doesn't make sense or you need help with it, like you can ask questions right then and there. So because of that, I'm only keeping it to 15 people. So that way we have time for like questions and stuff. So like I said, I'm starting that June 27th. If you go to the link in my bio, it says like beacons link. It's the 3rd thing. When you click that, it's the 3rd thing down. It's called Unshackled and Set Free. If you have questions, you can also just send me a message and I can answer them for you. But that's starting in 2 weeks. I wanted to start it earlier, but with us moving this week, I was like, I need time to like get settled. But we are starting that on the 27th. That should be a Tuesday. I'm 99.9% positive I have my date right. So again, go to the link in my bio, 3rd link down. Once you click it, it's called Unshackled and Set Free. Even like I said, if you look at the dates and you're like, oh, I can only make one of those, no big deal. You're going to get recordings of all of them. But general tips on getting over rumination. Sorry, I had a bunch of comments come in at one time. So rumination was by far the thing that I struggled with the most, by far, because I had personality traits that made me susceptible for just being an overthinker in general. So when you're already susceptible to being an overthinker, you're like way more susceptible to be stuck in rumination, 100%. What I really had to do, just like general tips for it, find start creating like new healthy habits and routines. So start doing things that take care of you, even if it's like your basic stuff, like doing a consistent nighttime routine and doing a consistent morning routine, finding ways to redirect your physical and mental energy. I started to the practice that helped me the most, and that was the wellness wheel practice that I did. So essentially, my therapist taught me like the traditional wellness wheel, which is like a balanced life. So it's like your volunteer work, your spiritual work, your career, your family life, and I kind of reworked it for myself as like a self-care wheel, but not like how society thinks of self-care. So it's like the different categories that essentially fill my cup. So it's like friendships and the family, um, my spiritual life, like mental health. So I had like 6 different categories, and I just kind of would plan out like how can I fill in one of these categories every week. And that just kind of helped me make a plan, and it helped me have something else to focus my energy on, and it helped me tremendously. It actually helped me so much I wrote a journal on it. That's also in the link in my bio. It's called the Wellness Wheel Journal. And it has like, it teaches you how to create your categories and like daily check-ins and weekly check-ins, so you can just kind of see like what things are helping me the most, and because it's a little bit of trial and error, but that helped me a lot. But even if you don't use something like that, just going out there and just, and like I said, I know this is hard because sometimes we don't feel like taking care of ourselves. We don't feel like getting up off the couch even because we're just recovering. But really just setting small goals at first. Like, okay, this week I want to do one thing that's just for me. Or this week I want to do one thing with my friends just to get me out of the house. Like just kind of meet yourself where you're at and start small. And then once that goes well, then you can like increase it and all of that. But just also be very gracious with yourself and understand that rumination is by far a very, very normal process of this. Some people also call it the obsessive thinking cycle. That's what I called it, because that's what I refer to it as, because it described it more accurately, because it was like obsessive, and I felt like it was very addictive and out of my control. And it affected everything. Like it affected my emotions, it affected my sleep, it affected my work. Like I wasn't able to keep focused on just like basic daily tasks. So it's very, very frustrating. So trust, I understand how it feels. um, but but yeah, the practice that helped me the most was the wellness wheel part. But everything that we work on too in that group coaching session I was talking about, it applies to rumination, because it works on the different aspects of things. Because a lot of times we get stuck in ruminating because we don't know how to manage our emotions and they're all over the place, or we get stuck ruminating trying to figure things out because we maybe don't understand that we're grieving, and so we're just kind of channeling our grief into something else, and we get really anxious because it's constantly on our mind. So learning how to manage some of these things also does help with rumination too. So if it is something you struggle with, definitely sign up for the group coaching, because it will absolutely help you. It's everything that I did that ended up working for me, plus stuff that I've worked in learned in grad school too. And someone asked any tips on self-esteem. So that same wellness wheel practice that I did actually helped build self-worth and self-esteem, because when you are taking care of yourself, you're subconsciously telling yourself that I'm worth taking care of. So when you're doing these things that fill your cup and bring you joy, and you're taking care of you, it actually does work on that. And you also have to find out some of the negative belief systems that you have about yourself, because we all tell a story to ourselves about ourselves, and oftentimes it can be really harmful. And in week 3 in the group coaching is when we talk about the triggers, and it kind of actually interconnects with the triggers, because what we don't realize is our triggers tell us a story about ourselves. So if we can figure out what that story is, then we can work on correcting it. A lot of this is learning how to correct your thought process like in the moment and redirect it. So rumination, self-esteem, the emotions, triggers, all that stuff is going to be applied in the group coaching too. But that, it really does. It almost feels like, I remember just feeling like my brain was just like a bowl of spaghetti. Like nothing just was like connecting and making sense. It was just like all these loops, and it was a mess. It sucked. Okay, so we got a good question over here on Facebook as well. Sorry, I'm on like multiple platforms, so if I pause for a long time, it's because I'm trying to read the comments everywhere. um, but how do I stop? So how do I stop my brain from telling me that it's my fault? And I think more of us struggle with this than we realize. I don't know if I don't really think this is talked about enough, honestly, like this particular part, which is like the self blame of it. And you have to remember, like, we were conditioned to blame ourselves for everything that was going wrong in the relationship because that's what they did. Like they shifted it, they shifted the blame to us. They were gaslighting us. They were constantly making us question every move that we made. And so naturally, we've kind of developed that habit. So whenever we get out of it, what I always recommend people to do, like I do this on almost every one-on-one coaching call. There's very few that I haven't done this with. I recommend you writing and making what's called, I call it a reality list, because you kind of need to remind yourself of the reality that you faced in the relationship. And it also helps like break the cognitive dissonance too. And get really specific with it. Like write things down that happened to you during this relationship. So instead of saying like, "Oh, he disrespected me," that's kind of a general thing. Like it's true, but it's general. So you want to get specific. Like, how did he disrespect you? What are the things that she did that made you feel disrespected? Don't say like my basic needs were met. Well, how? Why? So when you can start to see this, and you'll be surprised that you kind of start to remember things that you forgot because you're in kind of a safe place, and or you're not in that threatening environment anymore, so your brain can start to process things again, because a lot of things happen in your brain when you're in these relationships. I've learned a lot about it in grad school. It's fascinating. But getting yourself to not, it's, you use this list when you need it because you don't want to necessarily dwell on it like it's a tool. You're not trying to relive the trauma. You're just trying to bring yourself back to reality. And a lot of times when you can see this, it's like, okay, so one of the things I would say to myself was, okay, even if I did have like a weird facial expression, or even if I did say something with an attitude and I didn't realize it or whatever, and even if I did have an attitude, I still didn't deserve. And then one of the things that I listed, I still didn't deserve to feel unsafe in my home. I still didn't deserve to be cursed at in public. I still didn't deserve. So even if this part was true, and it very well might have been, this still crossed a line. Like people are allowed to be angry, people are allowed to be frustrated, they're allowed to have emotions, but there's still just certain lines that you just don't cross. That just takes it too far. So that will help, is kind of writing this down. Sorry, catching up on comments. A bunch came in at one time. Mm-mm. So some people are talking about flashbacks. Those are absolutely real. Flashbacks happen a lot because, again, when you are in that environment, there's kind of like, this is very simple breakdown of what goes on in your brain. Okay, so just bear with it. It's simple. You have like two parts in your brain. You have what's called your emotional brain, and you have what's called your thinking brain. And your emotional brain is going to be what initiates your fight or flight response. So that's what, and most of us know what the fight or flight part is, even if you don't know the details. But the emotional brain, like that's what activates it. The emotional brain was supposed to be there for an as needed basis. Like it was never supposed to essentially be overused. It wasn't supposed to become our baseline. It was just there for like when we were in danger. Well, unfortunately, with these relationships, you're constantly under, at least at the very minimum, an emotional threat. A lot of people are constantly under a physical threat too. So because you're under that constant threat, the emotional brain stays overly activated and your thinking brain is kind of put on rest, because when the thinking brain, you can also think of that as like your rest and digest. Well, if you're in danger, your body's not really worried about digesting its food. It's about like, how can I get out of this dangerous situation? So because of that, like if you think about the emotion versus thinking brain, the thinking brain kind of takes a little bit of a break while the emotional brain is doing its job. So there's so many things that we kind of forget for a little bit because we weren't even able to use our thinking brain to process them in the relationship. that when you get out and you're no longer constantly under that threat, the thinking brain can start to work again. And then you start to, re- like, literally out of nowhere, you'll have these memories of something like, oh my God, I remember this happening all the time. It would happen a lot when I would drive. Um, but I'd be like driving to work or something, and I would just have this like flash of just like something that happened. And I'm like, oh my God, I completely forgot that happened. But then what's frustrating about that is that you have this flashback, and then that creates all these other questions and then kind of triggers your rumination. So it's like, again, that's why I just like feel so incredibly messy all the time with this. It's because it's all completely like interrelated. And it's very, very frustrating. So yeah, I 100% dealt with that. So someone asked, how did you start in a new relationship without saying that you were in a narcissistic relationship? So I we'll just say I was on a learning curve with this. When I first started dating again, I like way overshared. And there's two things with that. Number one, people don't need to know your whole story right off the bat. They need to earn that right, um, to know, like, they have to earn that. But number two, like, nobody that you're going on a date with necessarily wants to know all about your ex either. So, and there's a lot of like, that's just true. But I was like oversharing way too much because I wasn't ready, and but I wanted to be ready, so I was like trying to force myself into it. I should not have done that. So highly don't recommend that. But when I met my now fiance, what I told him at the beginning was, because that question's normal. Like, what happened with your last relationship? It's a normal question. And I just said it was a really, I don't remember the exact way I worded it, but essentially I said it was a really unhealthy environment. I think the only thing I said was there was cheating involved. There was a lot of lies. It was a big learning lesson for me. I'm glad that I'm out of that because it was incredibly toxic. And that's all that I'm wanting to share right now. And I just left it at that. Now, and then now on his end, he didn't pry at all after that. Like, he didn't ask me more questions. He was just like, okay. And then we were just on to the next subject. As things started to get more serious, and I realized, like, oh, this is like going to become something here. That is when I told him that he was under a need to know basis, because I knew I was going to get triggered, but I didn't know what they were going to be. And that's exactly what I told him. And I just said, so when I do get triggered, I just promise to tell you. And when I got triggered, then I would explain the story behind it. Because when he and I first started dating, I did not know what I know now about how to manage and reduce your triggers. So, like, everything that I talk about in the group coaching that's coming up in the week where we do managing triggers, all of that stuff I learned in school. I really, really, really wish that I had learned it all back then, because I was doing one of two things. I was either just trying to willpower my way through my triggers, or I was just trying to avoid them altogether. And a lot of us do that. And it's not about avoiding triggers. It's about learning how to manage them. So again, if you are struggling with triggers, 100%, if anything, just do the group coaching for that week, because the stuff that we go over with triggers it's information that is not very well known, and I wish that more people knew about it. And I've talked about it a little bit on videos and stuff, but you need that time to like really break it down. So again, I do have that group coaching coming up. It's June 27th is the start date. It's 4 sessions total. It's called Unshackled and Set Free. And if you can't make all the sessions, it's no biggie. You get recordings of all the sessions sent to you. So, and the good thing is you have the recordings, so you can go back and watch them and redo the practices and all that. Sorry, I'm like really behind on comments because I talk a lot on live, so I'm sorry, y'all. Let me see. I love how much y'all are interacting with each other. That's awesome. That's also why I love this community, because you get to meet people that are going through the same thing that you did. Okay, so here's a question. Wait, where'd it go? Someone said I overshare like crazy. I was really bad at it. Like, I know for a fact that I drove my friends nuts. I just couldn't stop talking about it. And that was, again, part of the rumination thing. Oh, someone asked, how do I sign up for the group coaching week? If you go to the link in my bio, click on that link. It says like beacons. Click that, and it's the third thing that's down. It's called Unshackled and Set Free, and that'll take you straight to the information page. And you can sign up there. You can also just send me a direct message too, and I can answer any questions that you've got. Okay, so I have a question over here on Facebook too. I struggle with the word deserve. So why do I deserve good things? I understand that whole concept of like I deserve good things. But here's what my therapist told me that actually really helped a lot. Because sometimes what our issue is, it's not that we don't think that we deserve good things. What the issue is for a lot of us, and I'm not saying this is you, but this was an issue for a lot of us, and it was for me, is that we're constantly waiting for the next shoe to drop. Because it's like, okay, things are going well. That's not normal. So when's the BS coming? Like even in my relationship, I have struggled with that a ton. Like I just keep, for a long time, it was kind of like I was almost sleeping with one eye open. Like I was waiting. And here's the reality of the situation. Not necessarily just in life in general, there's always a shoe that's going to drop. That's just life. Like we have car troubles, someone gets sick, maybe someone passes away, or, we had a bad day at work, or, we have a management shift at our job and the new manager's terrible, so shoe drops are just inevitable. But the issue is that not the issue, I'm sorry, but the mindset shift that my therapist helped me make was you've done so much work on your healing and you've done a lot of sowing, and it's okay to enjoy the harvest of everything that you've sown. And because there's always a shoe that's going to drop, when we're thinking about that and we're like, when's the next shoe going to drop? What we're doing is we're worrying about the future, and we're worrying about a potential future, and we're worried about tomorrow, and I know this saying is overused, but it is true. Like tomorrow is not guaranteed. The only thing that we're guaranteed is like right now and right here in this moment. So I just started asking myself, is this how I want to spend my moment? Do I want to spend my moment worried about the potential shoe that's going to drop and rob myself of the joy from right now? Or do I want to just enjoy where I'm at and be present and get off my phone and just enjoy my life in this moment? Because that's what I have right now. And that kind of helped me a lot. So you can even kind of almost go at that route of like, okay, well, if you have trouble with the word deserve, it's like, well, I have good things going for me right now, and I'm just going to enjoy the fact that they're here. And that really did help me a ton. Oh, another question for the group coaching. Can I do it from the UK? Yes, but if you have issues with the checkout, just send me a DM, because sometimes it's complicated. But there is an option to pay with PayPal. So if you do it through PayPal, it shouldn't be a problem. I did not do EMDR, but I know a lot of people that have, and I've heard nothing but good things. I actually have a member of my coaching community that has started EMDR. And what I hear from everybody is that especially the first couple of sessions, they're exhausting. So like one of my friends was like, if you ever try it, like don't do it like in the morning, or like don't do it like on your lunch break at work. Like do it on a day off, because it's like very emotionally exhausting the first couple of times. But I've heard nothing but good things. I'm just I'll just be completely transparent with you guys. I'm in grad school, so my health insurance right now sucks. So I'm waiting. I'm gonna probably do it at some point, because I just honestly kind of want to try it. And it works on all different types of trauma. So what I do know about EMDR is that it actually started with veterans with PTSD. And that's what they kind of like, not necessarily did trials on, but that's what they were first focusing EMDR on. But it's transferred to a lot of other things like childhood trauma and sexual abuse, and a whole bunch, pretty much anything PTSD related. Because now we understand that PTSD isn't just associated with veterans. PTSD comes in all shapes and sizes. So it's been around for a lot longer than we think it has. It's just it's not a buzzword now, but it's more popular. It's being used a lot more and for a lot more different instances. So I definitely still want to try it because one of my friends that did it, she's another creator like I am. And I don't know what possessed her to do it, but she was just like, here I am thinking that I was like all healed and all good. And, relatively. And I go and do that. And she's like, and I'm worn out. So yeah, I'm definitely going to try it at some point. I don't know what I should know this, especially with me being in the field that I'm in with grad school. I don't remember what EMDR stands for, but EMDR it's a form of therapy treatment that's done where it essentially kind of helps rewire the brain and how it reacts to like traumatic memories and stuff. This is a very, very, very elementary way to explain it. But what I have also heard is that for people that struggle with the idea of talk therapy, EMDR is a very good alternate because it's not like when you sit down, what we think about with talk therapy. It's completely different. But honestly, just you can just Google EMDR and there's so much free stuff that's out there now. Oh, look at that. Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Thank you. I should know that off the top of my head, but I did not. Okay, sorry. Looking at comments. I think someone asked how long did you wait? I think that's in referring to dating again. Honestly, I really don't like answering that question, and only because like I started way too soon. I actually started dating again after about 5 months. It was way too soon. And honestly, it was probably too soon when I met my fiance as well. But I think because he's been through his own traumas, which let's be honest, like good luck meeting someone these days that doesn't have trauma. But I think because of his past, he was able to be a lot more understanding with what I was going through. Otherwise, it was too early. It just happened. It just genuinely happened to work out with me and him. From Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Thank you for being here. Oh, that's sweet. All right. I'm just making sure I have not missed anything else. Okay, so while I'm checking this, just a reminder, top 4 things that we struggle with after narcissistic abuse: emotional dysregulation, emotions being all over the place. Oh, from Australia. That's like one of my #1 places to visit. So emotional dysregulation, dealing with triggers, and they're usually very, very intense, especially at the beginning. Processing like grief and even understanding what the grief looks like after this, and then anxiety and paranoia. So those are the 4 topics that we're going over in the group coaching. It starts June 27th. I'm only taking max of 15 people because I like to keep it smaller still, just that way I have time to answer questions and still work with people. If you aren't able to make all the sessions, it's fine. You get recordings of everything. It's 4 sessions total. You can either pay for all of it up front and it's $80, so it makes it $20 a session, or you can break it up to 3 payments of $40, which makes it $30 a session. There's like worksheets that you'll get. We actually do like on-call exercises so you can practice everything that we're doing and make sure that it makes sense and that you understand it before. And we do it. So the sessions it's in Central Time and they start at, hold on. I think I changed the time from this last round because I was doing it at 6. I think I bumped it back to 6:30. I did. So it's at 6:30 Central Time in the evenings. But again, if you can't make them, you'll get recordings of all of them. But we actually like practice it on the call. So if you have questions, you're able to ask and all of that. So it's called Unshackled and Set Free. And you just go to the link in my bio. It's the 3rd thing down. And you can just sign up there. But you can also just like, if you have questions, like feel free to send me a DM. And I'll promise I answer them. And just because you send me a DM doesn't mean you're signing up. May I ask what slight flags you saw in the beginning looking back? Well, girl, there weren't slight flags. They were big ass red flags that I just ignored. if I'm being real. Um, ooh. So, okay. This is, well, let's just hang out on the red flag train for a little bit. So this one I always get people be like, that's not a red flag. But it was in his situation. And one of the red flags that was with him was that he was married before me. And between his divorce and meeting me, which is like a 2.5 year time period, he moved like every 6 to 8 months. But I'm not talking about like moving across the Metroplex. Like he moved like hours away. Now, the reason why that was a red flag in his situation is because every single move, there was drama surrounding it. So something happened at his job, or something happened with his mom, or something happened with this, or something happened with that. Like it was never, like it would have been different if it was like, oh, I had this great opportunity, so I went and tried it out. It didn't work out. Or, oh, I was single, I was out of my marriage and I just wanted to move somewhere I'd never been before, blah, blah, blah. Like that, all of those reasons would be completely different. But there was literally always some sort of story wrapped around every move. Huge red flag. Yeah, just really big red flag. Another red flag that I picked up on kind of early, but I kind of just like tossed it off as me being, I essentially just thought that I was being like too picky. I don't know. That's not the right word. I thought I was making a big deal out of nothing. But he would talk about his story with his ex-husband and saying how his ex-husband was like very abusive and like put him in the hospital several times. But every time he told the story, the number of times that he said he was put in the hospital changed. So like the first time he told me the story, it was he put me in the hospital twice. The second time I heard him tell someone else's story was he put me in the hospital 5 times. And another time I heard him tell the story was like he put me in the hospital like 3 times. So, and here's the thing. I know when you're in like the abusive situation like that, like physical abuse, it's very like nobody can sit there and tell you usually, unless they got out at a pretty decent time, how many times they crossed that line. But most people can tell you how many times it got bad enough that they were sent to the hospital. So that part you at least know. So it was just, and it was the fact that it was like 2 versus 5 versus like one time he said 7. So it's like, these are just very like it's not like he would say like 3 or 4, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. And so again, like, see, I'm even doing it right now. Like I thought I was like overthinking it and being like, no, I'm making a mountain out of a molehill. Well, let's just say I ran a background check on his ex-husband, like after we broke up, and there was no history of anything like that, like at all. And so I'm not saying that that didn't happen. It very well might have happened, but I also know how hospital systems work. And if that happens and you're put in the hospital because of domestic violence, like a report is filed. Charges may not be pressed, but a report is filed. There's nothing on this dude. So I was like, okay, well, that's not adding up. So they're not good with numbers. They're not good with a lot of things. One, when you lie so much, you can't keep track of what you said to everybody. So, it's just, so anyways, it was like things like that. It was just a lot of things that he said. It was like, there was like half truth to it. And then it was like half lie. So it was like just enough truth in there where it was like believable, but it was like masked in this like over exaggerated lie essentially. And that happened quite a bit. He told me that he was in the military for 4 years, but the timeline never added up because of his high school graduation date to when he said he got out, and all the other things that he did, nothing added up. So there was a lot. And you know what? Here's the issue. So I want to hang out on the red flags train for a second. So if you are listening to this, I want you to think about it and be honest with yourself. This is non-judgmental, but one of the problems that we have so much after this is like feeling like we can trust ourselves again because we missed all these red flags or whatever it may be. But if you're honest with yourself and you're looking back on this relationship, I want you to put like either like a thumbs up or like say me or like a hand wave, whatever. Just put something in the comments that if you look back on the relationship and you were honest and said, I saw red flags, but I ignored them for whatever reason it was. Just comment something like some kind of emoji, thumbs up or wave, whatever it might be, because I have a point that I'm doing this. So you look back I did see them, I just ignored them. Yeah, that's true. Me, I also had a gut feeling I ignored. That absolutely, that counts. I I've never heard this before. I'm sorry. This is so funny. I helped him hold up the flags. I relate. Seen 800 red flags and ignored them. And some of us didn't see them, and that's okay, especially with a lot of like covert narcs and stuff. They're sometimes it's completely blindsided. Okay, so we're all, but if we did see them, and again, we're not being judgmental about this. If we did see them, and there, like I said, there are situations where you did not see them, and so I'm not talking about that. But with the majority of us, we did see them and we ignored them. Here's the thing: we can trust ourselves. What we have to do is listen to ourselves, because what we didn't do last time was listen to our intuition and listen to our gut. We have the capability of seeing red flags, because here's the thing: whether they come up in the beginning or they come up later on down the road, red flags always reveal themselves. That's why they're called red flags, not camo flags, because they will show up. And when we notice them, we just have to act on them. So, what we do with this information is we have to go back and we have to think about what was the narrative that was going on in my head about the red flag. Like, no, I'm sorry, what was the narrative that was going in my head that outweighed the red flag? Because we were telling ourselves some kind of story that had more weight and had more value that made us ignore the red flag. So for me, mine was, I was afraid of being alone. My fear of being alone outweighed the red flags, because I remember thinking to myself, I know this thing isn't the best. It's not the best situation. It's not good timing. It's not this, it's not, but at least I'm not alone. And that was what was outweighing the red flags. It's like, well, I can live with this, because at least I'm not, it's better than being alone, which it's not, by the way. Um, I would take alone any day over that bullshit again. Sorry. Um, just getting candid here on the live streaming. Um, but we all had some sort of narrative, and maybe the narrative was like, I just wanted to help her. Like, she had this rough past and her parents were horrible and this and that. Like, I can be that person that can help change everything for her. That may have been your narrative. So we have to find out what it was, so that we don't make that same mistake twice. A lot of this, like healing work, and even some of the stuff that we're doing on the group coaching, it's about reflecting and figuring out what was going on in our headspace. Like, what were the stories that we were telling ourselves? What were the stories that were being told to ourselves? What did we buy into? And it's about correcting those belief systems. So I also felt sorry for him, and I did too. Because again, like, he told me the whole thing about how his mom left him when he was 6 months old and went and became a stripper in Vegas and like all this stuff and blah, blah, blah. And honestly, at this point, I don't know what was true and what was not true. It's not my business. I don't care. I don't care at this point. But he told me this whole thing, and the abusive ex-husband and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, oh, he's just never had a healthy relationship. Like, that's why he doesn't know how to have healthy confrontation. That's why he doesn't know all this stuff or whatever. So there was a lot of stories that I was telling myself that outweighed it, for sure. Pity played a huge part as well. Absolutely, it did. Oh, this is a good one. And okay, because man, did I struggle with this. Okay, it says sorry. It says, I'm at a stage where I want to see justice. He's living rent free in my mind, and I'm struggling. Okay, so I'm going to tell you, this is the whole reason why I've started calling all my pages and everything. There's a reason I call it the Redemption Army. And the reason why is because with these kinds of relationships, there truly are so many injustices that happen. And I tell people, like, if you're able to take legal action, like, do what you feel like you need to do. Like, absolutely do what you feel like you need to do. But unfortunately, when it comes to gaslighting and emotional manipulation and all this kind of and coercion and all of that, like, how do you prove that in court? Like, how do you prove that you're gaslit? Like, how do you prove coercion and all this kind of stuff? So it's like the courts aren't even, well, even when you have proof, the courts aren't even on our sides half the time. And so all of that stuff is very much out of our control. And what helped me a ton because God, I was angry. Like I wanted to expose him. I wanted everybody to know who he really was. I essentially wanted to do my own smear campaign, even though it wasn't a smear campaign, it was a truth campaign. I didn't do it. I mean, God, I was angry. Um, and I remember saying that exact thing to my therapist, that I just want justice. But here's the deal. Your redemption is your justice. You taking your power back is the best justice that you can get. Because what getting out of this relationship has allowed you to do is it has given you a blank canvas, and you can rebuild your life how you want it. You can invite the kind of people that you want into your circle and not into your circle, and you get to build this whole like peace bubble, man. And you get to just like chill out in your peace bubble, and you get to not let anybody pop it. And your redemption is your greatest justice, 100%. And that is something that you can control. And so for me, what I had to do was make the spiritual and conscious decision to let go of what I could not control and take hold of what I could, which was, you know what? I can take hold of this moment. What can I do in this moment that can bring me closer to peace? What can I do in this moment that can bring me closer to healing? And whatever, you know what? I don't need to expose him. He will expose himself. That's why he can't maintain friendships and maintain relationships or maintain anything. He exposes himself. All it takes is time. And that really, really helped me a lot. And I know that doesn't, I know that has to be a decision that comes inwardly. I know when I say it, it doesn't necessarily satisfy quite as much, but that's what helped me the most, for sure. Well, it's not just if you're neurodivergent, you want to see justice. It's anybody. It's not just a neurodivergency thing. Oh gosh, apparently my fiance is in his store watching me because I think anybody wants justice, honestly. But I understand what you're saying about like with the neurodivergency though, because with neurodivergent, it's very logic and factual. So when you can't get like when it doesn't line up and you don't have the why and you don't get the justice, it is a lot harder to let go of that. Um, so I do understand that. Yeah, that's like what I think you were typing as I was talking. Because justice in a way it's very factual. It's black and white. Yeah, I heard this and I think it's fantastic. So coercion is illegal in Australia, but we're not quite up to there yet. Why is it when you're trying to tell them how you feel, they think you are arguing? Well, because in their mind you are arguing. Because their word goes. It doesn't matter how you feel. Like it's just what they say goes. And when you usually tell them how you feel, that you're trying to hold them to some sort of accountability standard, and that they don't do that. They don't like it. So they're not, and quite frankly, they're not interested in how you feel. They don't give a damn because it doesn't matter to them. It does matter. It doesn't matter to them. I have not heard this. I'm going to have to look this up. That love bombing is now illegal in the UK. I'm going to have to look into that. I have a friend in the UK, so I'm going to have to ask her to give me the deets on that. Okay, I feel like I missed some questions, so I'm scrolling. I'm sorry, y'all. Y'all have any questions over here on the Facebook and YouTube world too? I turn my air conditioner up in my house, like I turn the thermostat up. It's because my air conditioner is kind of loud and I'm sitting next to it. It's like, ooh, starting to get hot. Yeah, so them watching you through a third party, that's not completely uncommon, to be honest. So what I would, well, if you know what the third party is, sorry, motorcycle just went down the street. Squirrel. If you know what the third party is, I would highly suggest blocking. And you know, it's okay to be a little bit guarded around people that you just aren't 100% sure if you can trust them. There were some mutual friends of ours that I felt like I probably could trust them, but they were like they were coworkers or married to a coworker of his, and I was very guarded with what I said to and around them because I just didn't really want anything getting back to them. So you just kind of have to be careful with that. Oh wait, I saw a question. Where'd it go? That is so cool that UK passed that law. I wonder what they use as the standard. This is just, now my curiosity brain's going. I wonder what they use as like the proof for love bombing when it's illegal. I'm interested now. I think it's great. I'm just like, how is that? How did they make that logistically work? So how did you feel when you left? Oh, that's a deep question. I was devastated. I mean, I was absolutely devastated. Um, and here's the thing, it's so interesting. So my fiance and I just moved into our house on Monday, and I remember, and I have a point to that why I just said that. I remember when I moved into the house with my ex narcissist, and I had a panic attack that day. Like, absolutely had a panic attack. And I remember calling my friend, and I was like freaking out. And I was just like, I'm freaking out. Like, what if this doesn't work? What if this doesn't work out? You know, this and that. Now, here's the thing, my divorce had also just gotten, like, my divorce from my kid's mom had just been finalized like a couple weeks before that. So in a way, I was like, well, this makes sense. My divorce was just finished. I just went through all of this, and I was like, I don't want to go through this a second time. But the reason why I had that fear so strongly is because I knew deep down this was not going to work long term. I didn't know necessarily the timeline of it, and I knew I was going to try my damnedest to make it work because I'm a Taurus and I'm stubborn as shit. But like I knew I was gonna try to make it work until it just absolutely crashed and burned. But that fear was so strong that day because of that inner feeling, and I knew it wasn't going to work. I've not had that thought at all with this move. Like, it's been nothing but excitement. It's been nothing but just like, it's just been peaceful. And, you know, moving's not peaceful, but it's just like all these like little details have just worked out in our favor. You know, we're just enjoying the fact that we have our first like real home together. It's completely different. And I'm not afraid of that at all. Like, do I deal with that fear every now and then that the shoe's going to drop? Of course I do. I'm a trauma survivor, but it doesn't consume me at all. But when we moved, he and I moved into the house, I had a full blown panic attack, like really bad. So I got on if this is your first time watching me live, you will find out very quickly that I go like in all sorts of different rabbit holes. So what got me started on that rabbit hole was, how did I feel when I left? I was devastated. I was absolutely devastated. And here's the thing, even when I left him, I still didn't know half the things that I ended up finding out. I didn't even know about the cheating yet. So I didn't find that out till about 2.5 to 3 weeks after I left him. But I had just started to get to the point, because at that point, it kind of felt like a normal breakup, like in a way, because the facade was still there a little bit. When I found out about the cheating, and then I found out about a bunch of other stuff before that, all the other stuff didn't necessarily surprise me. Because again, I saw all the red flags. So when I found out about I had to be careful what I say on live, but he was using behind my back. When I found out about that, I wasn't surprised. I didn't necessarily and then once I found it out, I was like, oh, well, then all this other stuff makes sense. But it didn't surprise me that was going on. You know, I found out that he had been lying about the military. That didn't surprise me. When I found out that he had been lying about whose name his car was in, like everything that I had been finding out, I was like, that doesn't surprise me. That doesn't surprise me, because we know. But the one thing I really didn't think that he was doing was cheating. And when I found out that he had been, and not just like it happened one time, like it was chronic, like he was hoeing around for like the last 5 months of our relationship. that is when I felt like I had been broken. I don't use that word anymore. I was deeply wounded, but at the time I felt broken. Um, and I was like, because that was the one thing that, because he used to tell me throughout the relationship that his ex-husband cheated on him, so he could never do that to somebody because he knows how that feels. And it seemed so genuine when he would say it, that was the one thing, like literally what I was doing every time I found something out was like, okay, he was using, like, well, at least he wasn't cheating. He was doing, well, at least he wasn't cheating. He was doing this, well, at least he wasn't cheating. So when I found that out, it was like every last shred of facade that was there completely broke, and I realized I knew this man not at all. And that was when the words I used to my friends were, I feel like I'm in a real life version of that dream that I don't know if y'all had this dream. Did y'all ever have the dream when you were a kid that you showed up to school in your underwear? That's what I felt like I was living that nightmare. And it's really hard to even put into words how I felt. It was awful. And then began my journey to healing after narcissistic abuse. Hold on. Sorry, I'm reading this question. Okay, so when you're asking this question over here on Facebook about, did you notice the version of that person you have at home and the one outside are two totally, are you referring to them? Like that there's a version of them at home and a version of them outside? And that those are two totally different people? I just want to make sure I answer your question correctly. Yeah, I used to actually want to know all the details about the cheating. Like that was one of the things I stayed ruminating on. Like I found out about 3 at least. But if y'all have ever heard of Grinder, apparently he was on it all the time. So there's really no telling how many. And I wanted to know, like, did it happen at home? Did it happen at work? You know, was it just like I wanted all the details with it? I'm really glad I didn't find out the details because it just would have been more stuff for me to process. I think I found out what I was supposed to find out. But yeah, 9. Wow, that's a lot. I'm so sorry. I'll tell you what, the first thing that I did though, like literally the first thing I did, I was so angry. Because like when something like that happens, that's what uninformed consent truly is. Because if I had known that, there's no way that I would have been intimate with him at all. And the biggest fear that came into my spirit when that happened was, oh my gosh, what if he gave me something? So like literally that day, I called the health clinic and went got like full panel STD done. It was the whole. I knew I could not do that. I had to do that to calm myself down. It just, and that truly is what uninformed consent is. If you ever have heard that term and not sure what it is, that's what it is. If I had known, I would not have been intimate with him at all during that time period. Okay, so did I notice that there was a version of him at the home and outside the home? So his wasn't necessarily 2 totally different people, but there were differences in the sense of he did a lot of dog whistling stuff. So if you've not heard of that, dog whistling is like, well, there's several ways that term is used in this instance because it's used in like race issues a lot, but in this instance, what dog whistling is it's almost like the abusive version of an inside joke. It's like where they say something in front of everyone else that sounds like normal conversation, but it's really a dig at you. And they do that because if you react to that, it makes you look insane. Because I was just talking. He did that a lot because he used to always give me a hard time about like how long it took me to get ready. And, that like he used to say things to me like I was the gayest guy he had ever dated. I've usually always gone for such butch guys, but you're definitely the gayest guy I've ever dated. Just like stuff like that. And there was one time we were at a family event. And now, mind you, we were at this family event. I lived 3 streets away from my mom's house, and we're just at my mom's house. It's really not even a major family event, just like everybody was coming over for dinner. and I didn't like what I was wearing, so I went home to change. And so he like made this big scene about it, joking about like, well, don't say anything about how he looks because if he doesn't like it, then it doesn't matter what anybody else says, and like trying to be all funny about it. And my mom caught on. Like my mom was like not happy, um, because he wouldn't let it go. Like he just kept going, and that was the thing is like he would try so hard to be funny, but he like never knew when to stop, and he just would cross the line continually. And what's frustrating about that was I would tell him like, okay, it's getting to where it's like not funny anymore, like can you stop? And I wouldn't be ugly about it, I'd just be like, okay, that's enough, like made your point, haha. And he would just keep going till I got mad, and then it's, well, you can't take a joke, and it's like, no, I can take a joke, you just don't know when to stop the joke. But so he just did a lot of that in public. But he was always like, he tried to be at least the life of the party when we were out in public. Like he was Mr. Charismatic, and well, at least that's what I used to say, that he was very charismatic and the life of the party. Looking back on it now, he just would suck the oxygen out of the room. Like he always had to be the center of attention, which made me be in the background and in the shadow. Which you know, I just. But then when we would get home, mm, it didn't necessarily go downhill. Here's the thing with our relationship, it was either really good or really bad. There was no in between at all. And when it got bad, it got really bad. So that part was very different because he would never yell at me. Actually, no, that's not true. We got into a car accident one time, and he got out of the car and berated the woman that bumped into us. It was not even that big deal, but he like scared her enough to where she called the police. That was embarrassing. So yeah, that slipped in public actually one time too. I forgot about that. So kind of mine wasn't as extreme as what some people talk about, but it was definitely there for sure. Well, I don't know, long tangent on that one. Sorry. And see, here's the thing too. Like, there's so many little things that I've forgotten. I'm so far removed from my own story that I don't really actively remember a lot of things. So when y'all ask questions, sometimes like it'll pop up like, oh yeah, that did happen. So then it makes me I just like go down a rabbit hole. So I'm sorry. Yeah, like he got out and was like screaming at the, and it wasn't like, it was a young girl. Like she was like maybe 19. Like it was an accident. Like she was probably on her phone, not paying attention, but it was like an abrupt stop. And she bent my bumper, but it was like we were driving to New Orleans. Like we still were able to drive it. Like it wasn't even that huge of a deal. But like she got scared enough that she stayed in her car and called the police office and called the police because he was yelling at her that bad. And I honestly stayed in the car because I was like, it was one of those situations that if I tried to interfere, it would have made it worse because I tried to tell him to stop. And then he told me to shut up and like all this stuff. And it was just, she ended up staying in the car. I ended up staying in the car. And then the police officer showed up and said, she mentioned that you were really angry to my ex. And he was like, well, yeah, I'm angry. But of course, when the cop showed up, he like all changed. So yeah, it was when the popo showed up, he was like, sorry, just like, yeah, I was angry, but I overreacted. I'm sorry. We're trying to go out of town, this and this and this. And I'm like, yeah, no, you would still be acting a fool right now if she hadn't called the cops. It was just so dramatic. It really was. Okay, sorry. Reading comments. If I just randomly stop and have this like real odd, serious look on my face, it's because I'm reading. What's worse is when you think you forgot something and the small thing makes you remember. Yeah, like I said, that's really what happens to me sometimes. Is that y'all will ask a question and I talk about it. I'm like, oh yeah, that did happen. And what's cool about it is like again, I'm far enough removed from my story and I process so much and like I see him for who he is that it really doesn't. I will tell you guys this: the last time, hi babe, the last time that I really got emotional anytime that I thought about something, this was a while ago, this was over a year ago. And I remember it was the first time that I learned what the term uninformed consent was, not realizing that it had happened to me. We already talked about this for a second. And I was listening to someone explain it and how they said that uninformed consent is classified as SA. If y'all know what I'm talking about. Again, I have to be careful what words I say on here, but it's classified as that. And for some reason, I don't really know why, it resonated with me so much, because it was something that I dealt with, and it was a violation of my body. Like it was. It just not in the typical way that we think of that, but it just, that was the last time. That was the first time in a very long time, and the last time, which has been over a year ago, that I've cried about something related to him. And it wasn't, and I don't even know how to explain why. I really don't. It was just, it just resonated so much. And I don't know, I guess just maybe having a term to it, because I just, I really don't. That may be something I need to kind of explore, why that impacted me so much. But it really did. I think just having the name of it, it just got to me. I don't know. Sure, if you have a question, just pop it in. It's just open Q&A today. There's no real agenda. So I left my narcissistic ex 3 years ago. This May was 3 years ago. Sorry, I'm fidgety. I've been moving around so much for the past 2 days that sitting down feels weird. Make sure I didn't miss any other one. You would make a wonderful big brother. That is one of the sweetest things anybody's ever said to me before. I'm actually an only child, so that's one thing that I always kind of feel like I missed, was knowing what that sibling bond feels like. That's why I love watching my kids, because I have 3. And my oldest is so similar to me, so I kind of always am I bet you I would have been like that as a big brother. He's very protective, but also bossy. He has the biggest heart. And he's like me. He feels everything, head to toe. Any emotion he has, he just feels it with his whole body. Oh yeah, if you're only 7 months out, I emphasize only. That's still pretty early. I mean, truly. Because and here's the other thing you have to think about. We all have different paths in general. We've had different opportunities to build resiliency, because resiliency is a skill set. It's hard to be resilient if you've never had to overcome obstacles and hardships in your life. So we've had different opportunities for that. Maybe we've had different resources with therapy or not, or whatever. And we've also even though a lot of our stories, as you see other people's stories, you realize the underlying foundation is very similar, but we still each had our own individual experiences. So never ever, and I'm just telling you this just so that way, well, everybody really, never compare your timeline to someone else's, because there is no such thing as a playbook for this, and there's no specific timeline. And I'm going to get to the next question too, but there's another question of how long did it take to trust yourself and trust other people and open up again. All that is subjective. And as long as you are doing things on a day-to-day basis, and you have the tools and you have the strategies and you're utilizing them and you are taking those steps forward, that's all that matters, period, end of story. With that said too, if you are needing those tools and strategies, if you need to find tools to help reduce the intensity of your triggers, or just how to learn how to manage them, or dealing with all the emotions with this and processing grief and dealing with anxiety and paranoia, because God, my anxiety was insane. We cover all 4 of those topics in the group coaching that I have coming up. It's on June 27th. So if you are struggling with those, you absolutely should sign up, because you're going to get strategies for each individual things, learning what the 5 stages of grieving a narcissist looks like, and how to identify that stage and have strategies for each stage of that. is finding out, like, am I paranoid, or am I just hypervigilant? Why am I dealing with this anxiety, and having strategies for those, and your emotions, and how to reduce your trigger. It's literal strategies that you can start implementing. And the reason we only meet once a week is because we get the strategies and you can implement them throughout the week. And at the start of the next session, okay, how did all that go? Great. Okay, here's the next one. And then we just repeat that cycle. And even if you can't make all 4 sessions, you get recordings of all of the coaching. Ooh, my AC just kicked on, so if it's loud in the background, I'm sorry. I don't know how it's going to pick up on here. It's my first time going live in my new house, so y'all just let me know if it's too much background noise. But anyway, so we're starting that June 27th. It's at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. If you can't make all the sessions live, it's okay. You'll get recordings of all the coaching content and the worksheets and everything that we do. You'll get it. So if you just go to the link in my bio, it's the 3rd thing down. It's called Unshackled and Set Free, and you can get signed up for that. Sign up for it that way, or just message me and you can ask me any questions too. Well, hello, my friend. I'm missing you too. Oh my gosh, I haven't talked to you in forever. We need to catch up. Okay, and a bunch of comments going. That's a good question. What did she do to make sure the kids healed? So my kids were in therapy, but honestly, like, here's the thing that made our relationship so confusing too. My kids never saw that side of him ever, because I have shared custody with their mom, so we have 50-50 custody. He was always at his best when the kids were around, except for at the very end, and he actually yelled at me in front of them one time. So they got a very minor glimpse of it one time. It was when they left is when all the stuff went down. So my kids didn't directly see all of that. The thing that they suffered the most that I've had to do and amend is I was constantly operating as, like, you're talking about an anxiety scale, like a 1 out of 10. My baseline was like a 7. Most of our baselines in these relationships are like a 6 or a 7. So, the kids spilled their milk, or if they broke something, or like whatever, if they were being too loud, something that on the normal 1 to 10 scale that would be like a 2 or a 3, it would set me up to a 10 because I was already operating at a 7. So I was impatient, and I was too short fused with them. So that's how they were affected, is because they were affected because their dad was affected. And I had to work on that guilt a lot. I sat down with my older 2, because they're the only ones that really remember any of that. And I've really had age-appropriate open conversations with them about what was going on with me. Again, they never saw a lot of this going on, so I had to kind of explain it to them in an age-appropriate way, what was happening in the house when they were gone. And that was hard. Like, God, that was hard. But I was not, how do I word this? I wasn't afraid or ashamed to apologize to my children, because they deserved one. And because I'm not in it anymore, I am, no doubt in my mind, I'm a better dad. No doubt in my mind. So that's how my kids were affected the most. That was a good question. Oh, I never answered this one. So how long did it take you to be able to trust someone again? So I actually was dating my fiance. We started dating about 6 to 7 months after. Again, it was very early, probably too early. And I really didn't actually really truly trust him. This is why I know it was too early, until about 4 months in. And ultimately, it came down to just choosing to. I had to choose to allow myself to be vulnerable again. I just decided to. And I know that sounds very simple, but when it comes to other people, trusting other people truly is a choice, because they have characteristics or they show certain things about themselves that make them seem trustworthy, and we decide to put our trust into them. The most important part is learning how to trust yourself. Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you. Over here on YouTube, I treasure you and feel like you're a friend and never even met you. Thank you for all that you do. That is so incredibly sweet. Thank you so much. How did I leave? I kicked him out. Like, kicked him out. It got to the point where it was very dangerous. One evening, he came home. He wasn't just drunk. But I'd seen him drunk many, many times. He did something else that day. I can't say what because I don't know exactly what. I suspect what it was. And he had me backed into a corner. He was spitting on me. He had his fist balled up. The veins were like popping out of his neck. His face was red. And it was a whole thing. And it was one of those moments where it's like, I have to either stand up for myself right now or I'm going to get hurt. And I kicked him out. That was it. Well, that was the start of all the mental hurdles and all of that. But now that was actually my second attempt leaving. I did try to leave him once after 3 months, and I let him convince me to come back. But the second time I was done after that. Okay, so just for time's sake, because I gotta start cooking dinner here pretty soon. I have like 5 more minutes. So if you have any other questions, just let me know. I'll probably have time to answer like 1 or 2 more. But just a reminder, if you need to have a playbook or some kind of strategies or just something to start working on dealing with the major things that we deal with, your triggers, emotional dysregulation, your grief, and then anxiety and paranoia, please sign up for my group coaching. It will 100% benefit you. It's June 27th. It's 4 sessions total. You get recordings of all the sessions, even if you aren't able to show up. And you'll get strategies for all of those things, worksheets, on-call exercises that we do. And if you want more information on it, you can either direct message me or just go to the link in my bio. It's the 3rd thing down. I'm only taking a max of 15 people because I like to have time to like let people ask questions, be able to answer them and not feel rushed. So I'm only taking a max of 15. I still have some spots left for that. Did your ex Hoover? And if so, how long after the final breakup? So he did Hoover, but not in the way that we think of Hoovering. And the reason why is because, so his version of Hoovering was trying to stay friends with me, because not a lot of people realize that that's Hoovering, but it is. A lot of times when we think of Hoovering, it's about trying to get you back romantically. Hoovering's just about keeping you under their power and control. And so he was really adamant that we stayed friends. Like, he was like, oh, you're the best friend I've ever had, blah, 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 blah. And because I didn't know about any of this, I mean, I fell for it like hook, line, and sinker. And honestly, at the time, I didn't have a concept of my own self outside of him. So like, even though I knew he wasn't good for me, it was like imagining my life without him in it. I couldn't wrap my head around that. And it was, I'll just go ahead and tell y'all, the manipulation and the lying and the abuse, it does not stop just because the relationship stops. And I don't really have time to like get into all of that. But that was what Hoovering looked like for him. And then it took me about 4.5 months to go no contact, somewhere between 4 and 5 months. And then after I went no contact, I didn't say anything to him. I just blocked him. I highly, highly suspect that he messaged me on a random account on Snapchat after my fiance and I started dating, because all of a sudden it was like the timing was just too weird. And when you've been with somebody for a while, like, how they text, what emojis they use and all that. And when I was getting these messages from this account, I didn't know. I was like, this is him. And outside of that was it. That's a good question. So it's not a stupid question. So someone said, what's Hoovering? So it's where, like, what is talked about on the platforms mostly, it's when they're trying to win you back. Like, if you think about a Hoover, like a Hoover vacuum cleaner, they're trying to suck you back into their life and into their spell or whatever. But that's where like a very obvious form of Hoovering is like, oh, I miss you, I screwed up, I've changed, I'm going to therapy, like blah, blah, blah. And it's been like 3 days since the whole thing happened. But there's also like what's called reverse Hoovering, which is where they kind of try to manipulate you to get to you to reach out to them. And that's what people talk about in the platforms. I need to make a video about this because most of what's out there is about the romantic side of hoovering and trying to get you back into the relationship. But the hoovering really is about just keeping you, even if it's just in their back pocket, it's under their power and control. And mine did that through trying to stay friends with me. But that's not a stupid question. Yeah, there is a term for it, and it's very common, very, very common. I never say like they all do it, or we can't speak in absolutes like that. But it's very common. I'll just say that. I'm pregnant with his child, and he shows me no support. That is very sad, and I'm so sorry. I hope you're able to find support outside of him, because it's an exciting time, but it's also a scary time. It's a big life change. Um, okay, I'm just making sure. I love how much y'all are interacting with each other, though. Like seriously, like that's such a good thing too. Um, because what you'll find, like when you hop on like my life or other people that are in the same niche as me, is like everybody's story is so similar. So like so similar. It really helps break that isolation. Oh, hold on. Okay. So this question, okay, you know what? I'm going to answer this one, and then I'll probably have to call it a night. So it says, what if I'm hoovering, trying to get back with my narcissist because I can't exist on my own? So that's actually, you know, I've worked with a couple people one on one where something like where that has happened, where it's like their narcissistic partner like tried to get like such said don't reach out and blah blah, and they kept trying and this and that. Here's the thing: it's all about motive. It's not this is the really unfortunate part, but trauma responses can sometimes very much look like these narcissistic and toxic traits too. But where the difference lies is what is the motive behind the action. With narcissistic people, the motive behind the action is power and control. If we're in the position where we're reaching out to them, we still want to try to make it work. And I don't, because I relate to that. Like even though I knew I couldn't go back romantically, I still couldn't imagine my life without him. And I was wanting to have that friendship. It was like this weird dichotomy of a feeling. But anyways, that's a different subject. um, but the motive behind that wasn't to manipulate and have power and control over him. It was because I still felt like I loved him. So when you're questioning if you're the narcissist, you have to ask yourself, what is the motive? Am I reaching out to him because I want to control him and I want to have power over him and I want to manipulate him? Or am I reaching out because I truly don't know what my life would be like without him? I truly don't know, you know, I don't know who I am without him. And it's, I if that's the motive that's behind it, then that's very different. I'm still not going to necessarily say that it's the right move to make, um, because what you'll find if you, I'm just going to say this journey is hard either way. The journey is going to be hard if you go back. It's going to be hard if you leave and stay gone. The difference between the two is if you go back, you're voluntarily giving your power up to this individual. Like you are you're never going to be able to reach your full potential as long as you're with a narcissist. It's actually emotionally impossible. So you're voluntarily giving your power up when you go back, and that hard never ends because it is so very unlikely for them to change. I'm not going to say it's impossible because I work in the mental health field and I do believe that change is possible for anybody if they do the work and use the tools. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. But the statistics show it's very unlikely that's going to happen. If you leave, it's still going to be hard. It's going to be probably one of the hardest journeys that you've ever done, because there's so many questions that you have to answer and look inside of yourself and figure out, why am I accepting these behaviors from individuals, and what is the story that I'm telling about myself, and how do I treat myself? What are the words that I use when I describe myself? It's grueling and it's messy, but that hard's temporary, and that hard, you're taking your power back. So you just have to ask yourself, if it's going to be hard either way, what outcome do I want? Do I want to give my power up and likely never be able to get it back? Or do I want to be working the hard route to take my power back? And that's the part where it's your redemption. You're redeeming your life back, and maybe for the first time ever, really building a life that you're proud of and that you want. That's peaceful. That's like the biggest thing. It's having peace within your life. I don't think we realize how well. We don't realize it when we're in these relationships. Our life is chaos, and chaos is normal. That peace feels weird and it feels uncomfortable almost, but it's so nice. I mean, yeah, I know that wasn't very tweetable, but it is. It's unlike anything that it's hard to describe. I'll come up with something better for next slide that you can tweet. But all right, guys, I'm going to hop off here so I can get dinner started, because I'm starting to get hungry. But I appreciate you guys being on my live on this Wednesday evening, and for distracting me from unpacking my house. Last time that I'll announce it, just in case anybody missed it, but I am starting my group coaching on June 27th. It's called Unshackled and Set Free. We're tackling the 4 common struggles after leaving a narcissist: emotional dysregulation, managing triggers and reducing their anxiety, or reducing their intensity, anxiety and paranoia, and processing the grief. You get strategies for each one of those topics. It's 4 sessions total. If you aren't able to make the sessions live, or can make some but can't make all, no biggie. Anybody that registered gets recording for all of them. It's called Unshackled and Set Free. Just go to the link in my bio. It's the third tab down, and you can find information on that. And you can also send me a direct message and I can answer any questions you have there. But again, thank you guys for being on the live and for all of the support that you guys have shown and just hanging out with me, honestly. It's an honor to be a part of your healing journey, and you are always welcome here over at the Redemption Army. And I'm just glad that it's a dual feeling of, I'm sorry you relate to my content, because that means I know what you've been through, but I hope that my content continues to give you peace, clarity, and validation, and help you break that isolation too. But I love you guys. Have a great rest of your evening, and I will see y'all the next time we're on live.